Volusia County elected officials. Thank you all for being here today. At this time, we're going to start with the introductions. And Jim, if you would start, and we'll go around the table with who you are, where you're from.
Harry Jennings, Mayor of Daytona Beach Shore.
Lois Kerensky, Council Member Ponce Inlet.
John Penny, Mayor of Holly Hill.
Alan Green, Mayor of Fort Orange. George Locke, Mayor of South Daytona.
And Tom Laputka, Mayor of Orange City.
Pam Wood, City of Daytona Beach, City Commissioner.
Ed Kelly, Ormond Beach.
Bob Apcar, Mayor of DeLand.
Buddy Snowden, Mayor of Lake Helen.
James Sauer, Mayor of Pearson.
Anita Hebe Peters, Vice Mayor of City of Berry.
John Sargent, Mayor of Daytona.
Douglas Gibson, City of Oak Hill.
Michael Gaziak, Mayor of Edgewater.
Thank you. If you all join us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to move the item 3 to continue it to the next meeting in March, and we'll go on to item number 4. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Pam Woods, who has worked on this project as the chair of the Homeless Committee for the past year. Thank you initiate your work, and it's all yours.
Thank you. The Homeless Subcommittee, made up of Councilman Doug Daniels, who I saw come in the room a little bit earlier, Mayor Tom Laputka, and Mayor John Penny and myself, have spent the last year trying to bring information to y'all on the definitions of homeless, what it looks like in Volusia County, some of the programs that have been going on, so that you would have a better base of knowledge as we try to move forward on this. About 6 months ago, when the funding for the central facility in the county stalled, we realized we needed to take a step back. And at that time, Councilman Doug Daniels recommended that we sit down with the 3 gentlemen that you see up here today, Chet Bell, Randy Croy, and Ray Salazar, which you're going to hear them talk about in a few minutes. But one of the things they also recommended that we do is survey all of you. We sent out a survey before Christmas. We heard back from 9 municipalities, and what you told us was not any big surprise. We asked you to identify those populations of homeless in your own cities that you perceived to be the biggest problem. And what we saw were chronically homeless, those that may or may not have substance abuse issues, may or may not have mental health issues, but the ones that are visible, the nonviolent offenders. So that piece of it was not a surprise to the group as we move forward. We then looked at other needs in the county, and at some point, we realized that they needed to finish this plan without the politics because of so much that was going on. So those of us that were elected officials did the step away and let them finish the plan that you're about to see. Questions, we would like to do them for the roundtable members after the presentation, so please write them down while they're speaking. Members of the audience, you can certainly ask questions after the meeting is over. Then they will stay after, but roundtable members, we will entertain your questions, once the presentation is done. Today, as you listen, what I ask that you do is what you hear them say is, does it make sense? Is it something that we should look at in our county, and should we move forward? So keep that in mind while they're speaking, and then we're going to be asking you for your feedback as you have time in the next week or so to process it. So I'm going to turn it over to the 3 of them now and let them present what they found. Thank you very much. I want to say they volunteered their time for all of this. We couldn't have done it without them, and they were such a big help. Even as we were dealing with some of the issues down on Beach Street, their professional knowledge and expertise really helped us deal with that as well. So a big thank you, applause to them to start with. So thank you.
I'll begin by stating exactly the goals that we want to make as part of everything that we do. The first goal is to prevent homeless whenever we possibly can, and to house each person who is homeless in Volusia County. Those are the 2 overriding goals. Now, to achieve those goals, we must move from conflict to collaboration and partnership in pursuing the best practices. I'm a formerly executive director for the United Way of Volusia and Flagler counties, and our mantra that we use to be able to assess social services was collaborate or evaporate. It is just not enough resources. We've got to be able to work together.
My name is Randy Croy. My name is Randy Croy, and we met with editorial board of the News Journal last week, and they asked a question to each of us, and I thought it was a good question, and that was, why are you serving in this committee? And it gave us pause, and I thought to myself, I don't know how we answered it exactly, probably not very succinctly, but I thought to myself afterwards, why am I serving? And I feel that we have a significant momentum in this community to do something, and there's a lot of people who work very hard at getting us to this point, many of you who are here today. And I also think about this may be our best last chance to get it right. You know, the circumstances continue to change nationally, internationally, locally, and right now the door is open, the window's open. And secondly, I've been a taxpayer in Volusia County, city of Daytona Beach, for almost 40 years. And I want to make sure, as a taxpayer, that whatever resources that we spend on this effort are done efficiently, effectively, and with some proven outcomes. So our focus we're going to talk about is leadership. Today, I would say our leadership, although it's been tremendous, it's been somewhat fragmented. And perhaps today we'll talk about ways to enhance that leadership. Secondly, we want to talk about coordination of our existing resources and then our future resources. And again, I'll use the term fragmentation. I'm not sure that we have always collaborated as well as we could have in delivering care. So we believe there's a real opportunity to do better. And finally, resources. What do we currently have to serve the population? And what new and improved resources can we bring to bear? So what we hope to do is to be able to give the elected officials a real opportunity to think about some of the options we may have on the table. My last comment is that in this area is that we need to make sure we aren't only talking about street homeless. You know, in all communities, there's many faces of homelessness, and in this community, street homeless, the most visible, and in many respects the most difficult, have gotten a lot of public attention. And but we have to remember that in our big community, there's more people who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, one paycheck from being on the streets. We need to make sure that whatever plan we include addresses those other populations as well. So Randy started off by telling you a little bit about what we're going to tell you today. And you notice he talked about resources and the fact that there are currently in this community already a lot of resources that are dedicated towards homeless services. We went to the Volusia Flagler Coalition on Homelessness, and I asked Jeff White, the director there, to provide us with, you know, what is the amount of money that's currently coming into Volusia County directed towards homeless services. And I think everybody is kind of surprised that the response is, geez, there's about $5.5 million. And that's a combination of the McKinney-Vento Act funding, in other words, money coming in from HUD, and also dollars that a number of nonprofits across our community are already applying that come from a number of different sources. Some from private donations, some from state grants, but a total of $5.5 million. And it doesn't include another more than $2 million that's been used by the Salvation Army over the past year to essentially end veteran homelessness in Volusia and Flagler. And it doesn't account for all the literally millions of dollars in-kind contributions that come from all of the volunteer work that's done in the community serving homelessness. So it's important to note that we're not starting from ground zero here, but clearly what's important is that we weave together the resources that we have across this community in ways that up to this point in time we haven't. And I think all of us can be gratified that over the last month this community has really started to come together in response to the encampment, or whatever term you want to give to it, at the County Service Center on Beach Street. A lot of movement has been made by the governmental sector, by the nonprofit sector, and by the business sector to bring about positive change. And it's informative to us about what we can do when we start to create synergy amongst these systems. So what we need to do with our current system of care is make sure that we go back and we look at it carefully, we inventory all of it, and we put it together in such a way that we are making sure that we're getting the maximum benefit that we can out of our current system. I want to go on and talk about kind of what a system of care should look like in a community that's evidence-based. That's an overworked term. But the reality is, as our nation has addressed homelessness now for probably 3 decades, we've really been working on this, it's starting to become clear what is effective in addressing and in ending homelessness. But in our community, it seems like over the past year, we've kind of gotten hung up on the issue of shelter. And that's why we've highlighted it in this slide in green. The evidence-based language speaks to shelter as what's the community's crisis response to a person that is homeless? How do we immediately start the process of achieving what should be our goal with homelessness, which is what you see in the middle of this slide, which is providing stable housing to each and every individual in our community. That may seem like a lofty goal, but we have lots of evidence that shows that it's achievable. But I want to spend just a minute of time talking about several other bullets that are associated with an evidence-based system of care that we've really started to work on over the past month and that show such great promise. First is outreach. First is having a cadre of people who are going out into the community and are making sure that every homeless person is identified and is given the opportunity to be sheltered and to start a process that leads towards stable housing. It's also a system that, for those individuals and families that are at risk to homelessness, that they have the ability to meet with people and receive services before they become homeless. So outreach is key. Then the notion of coordinated entry, and this is where our Homeless Coalition has really been focusing its efforts, is to create a funnel, if you will, that allows for every person who is at risk of or experiencing homelessness to get access to services that will either prevent their homelessness or, if they are homeless, to eventually lead them to stable housing. And to go along with that then is case management. And case management means that with homeless individuals that outreach is not a one-time event, but that as individuals are identified as homeless or at risk to homelessness in the community,
that they are regularly contacted and revisited, and that the community works towards achieving stable housing for each and every one of those individuals. So, as Randy said, we've got two large populations that we need to make sure that we address. Those individuals who are experiencing chronic homelessness and those people that are at risk to homelessness. And it's incumbent upon us to create a system in our community where our end goal is not just shelter or not just a crisis response, but stable housing for every individual.
So how do we get there? And what role do you have to play in this? And I think we have a foundation of leadership in this community. And I'd just like to take a second to recognize, the faith group locally has been working on this issue for years. And they have mobilized constituents and advocates and interested individuals who are pledged to make a difference in our community. The city of Daytona Beach, I would say in this year, has stepped to the forefront of leadership and ideas and being open to looking at options and engaging in us, but many others, in the process of trying to come up with a solution that's going to make a real difference long term. Volusia County, my experience as an executive director was always that Volusia County is incredibly generous with providing support to local providers, and we have some ideas on how they can continue to ensure that they're getting the greatest bang for their buck going forward. Homeless advocates, those voices are voices we need to seek out, and we need to hear, and we need to listen to, because they have experience that some of us may not bring to the table, and we need to be open and ready to listen to those voices. The News Journal. I know in Central Florida, the Orlando Sentinel has been a huge conveyor of information and knowledge to the general public. And clearly, that's what the News Journal's efforts have been focused on during this, quote, crisis response. And we think we have a strong partner and want to thank the media for their attention. And now it's up to local government, business leaders, and others in our community who may not have felt as much a part of this effort to step up to the plate. And it's going to require that kind of leadership, in our opinion, to move this ball forward. And we're going to talk about a strong homeless service coalition, and made up of not homeless providers primarily, but of leaders in our community. And we have a really good model that we have seen here locally that shows it can work when we focused on homeless families and children's services. And certainly that same effort can work right here, right now. And the last comment is for all of us, not participating is a failure to lead. So we're asking all of you, all of us, to repledge our commitment to make something happen for the people at highest risk in our community, and the partnerships that we'll have with law enforcement and with the business community and with the faith community can only enhance the quality of life in our community. And that's where leadership comes in.
So where are we
today to try to resolve this issue of conflict and collaboration. We presently have, and I sit on the board of directors for the Continuum of Care. It's a housing and urban development required committee that oversees a lot of homeless delivery systems. And quite frankly, our original task in creating the Continuum beyond the Coalition for the Homeless was to be able to see good sector representation in the community. Government, private sector, all coming together to start talking about what these requirements are, how the transition is occurring, what priorities are changing from the federal level about what categories of homeless that we are serving in the community. So the Continuum of Care has been a great body chaired by Susan Clark, one of our providers, and it has some struggles. And we think today that it's time to be able to reposition, rebrand that Continuum of Care into something that looks like the Central Florida Commission for the Homeless. We've already approached, and as a board member, I attended the last executive committee to get their feel for, can we change? Can we re-emphasize and bring different talent to the table? They were in total agreement. I will take it to the complete board of directors. We began recruiting key individuals in the community to be able to elevate our view of how the community sees the issues of social services and homelessness in particular. Sam Mullen, who's with the Bank of America, has agreed to chair this continuum. We've been able to identify also Judge Dave Beck, Janet Hamer. Janet Hamer is currently with TD Bank, but she's worked with the Federal Reserve in the past and has been very instrumental, extremely knowledgeable about housing issues. And then Jim Rose, the local attorney in town, who has been at the table in a number of boards of directors to be able to provide his professional services as well. So it's an expansion of this, we believe, expansion and elevation of the existing committee that will be able to stay at that 30,000-foot level as we're looking at the issues that confront all the cities in the county. The committee, though, is really focused on evidence-based approaches. But the biggest focus would be to ensure service coordination. We have providers that are doing phenomenal work. Salvation Army, quite frankly, when the crisis occurred, did some extraordinary work to be able to say, we can deliver. And then the cities and the coordination occurred. That's how that initial crisis got taken care of. And ensuring service coordination throughout is going to be the key. Now, the commission, in the next slide, will require staff to implement decisions. We are recommending that this individual be funded from the private sector, free of the city's responsibilities or the county. We want that individual to be an independent collaborator, a consensus builder in the community, employed by the commission. And we're very quick to tell everybody around this table that we're retired, we're not looking for a new job. So that we think though that there is somebody out there that has these skills and capacities that would be able to do the job. You heard a presentation from Jacob Stewart and Andre Bailey here at the roundtable. And that's kind of the emphasis, the energy that we want to bring to the table. There have been suggestions around this table that the funding should be somewhere in the area of $100,000 for benefits, and I'll leave that up to the experts that do this kind of business going forward. But that's the caliber of position that we think would lead.
Just one other thing I'd like to mention on that too. Ray just identified 4 individuals from the private sector that have stepped up. But we don't see that as in any way to be the composition. We need a large, diverse, professional group, and we need to make sure that this Commission on Homelessness is reflective of the private sector, the governmental sector, and the nonprofit sector. And I think our view on this is in kind of equal amounts. So that we get the kind of collaborative impact that is necessary. We're looking for synergy here. We're not just looking for, doing a little bit more. We're looking to get to the point where these three areas of our community are really working together to create something that's bigger than what any single one of them can do.
Which probably brings us to the next slide, and that's resourcing. So how are we going to do this? And we aren't going to give you the funding formula and sources today, but it's there. I always like to quote from Mother Teresa when they asked her why she spent so much time generating support for her efforts rather than just treating the people in need. And her comment was, if there are no means, there are no ends. So means are what we need to stay focused on. And a couple of things we know here is if we want a comprehensive, coordinated, community-wide plan that has support, we have to recognize that different areas of our community, our large community, have different needs. And whereas Daytona Beach may have been focusing on the street homeless recently, somewhere in West Volusia, that focus may be families and children that are homeless or sleeping in cars. There might be another community where the elderly individuals who are just one illness away from homelessness may need that attention. And if we aren't smart in recognizing that all of you here represent different interests, but all of you have some needs of people who with better services can have a higher quality of life. And that's one of the reasons we believe that if we're going to be successful, especially in securing new funds, our plan has to be collaborative and comprehensive in nature. The many partners that we can draw upon will all be based upon win-win relationships. We met with Chief Chitwood last week and discussed some of the needs of local law enforcement and the potential partnership that we have with local law enforcement. We can create win-win environments with our partners in law enforcement, in the media, with the business community. The interrelationship of leadership, opportunities, and what we do here now is vast. And I'll give just two quick examples of money that's kind of sitting on the table right now if we were prepared to take advantage of it. One is there's a Access to Care federal grant that has guidelines, and it basically says it needs to be successful in your application. You need to use evidence-based practices, certain strategies that have proven to interrupt homelessness. And much of their focus is on permanent housing, access to permanent housing, using a concept called housing first. And successful applicants will, in fact, use that as a primary strategy. And then the plan will require collaboration among local governments and all the advocacy groups that we have in our community. Without that and a comprehensive plan, we will not be successful for funds of that nature. In this particular grant, private not-for-profits can apply for $400,000 for 3 years. There's no local cash match required. Local governments could apply for up to $800,000 a year for 3 years. So the real question is, how do we position ourselves through a collaborative, comprehensive plan to be able to be successful in bringing that money to the table? There's also a bill that's moving fairly quickly through the legislature right now that doesn't raise taxes a nickel. It's under the Sadowski Housing Trust Fund, and some of our local legislators have introduced this bill in order to allow local governments to use up to 25% of their grant funds for a specific best practice to interrupt homelessness, and that's rapid rehousing. It's identifying people who have become homeless, and with a quick and intensive intervention, we can keep them from becoming street homeless. And for our area, last year under the Sadowski funding, we received $2.4 million. Wasn't a math major, but my estimation is that this would allow us to use up to $600,000 of this funding source to be part of our plan. And just to give you, that just gives you an idea of, there's money there. It's how are we positioned to successfly apply for and receive that funding.
And just one other thing I would add to that is that, in a lot of ways, the ideas that we're putting forward here, none of them are new ideas. All of the Housing First model is clearly documented in national literature now about best practice in housing. And the notion of a commission locally is, we have admittedly patterned ourselves exactly off the presentation we saw from Andre Bailey and Jacob Stewart here several months ago. It's important to note that Commission on Homelessness, since it was organized in 2014, has leveraged $15 million from the local community in Orlando to bring to bear local dollars to bring to bear on issues of homelessness. And if we look in this community, again, what we've done over the last month, what Manager Chisholm and Commissioner Woods and others have been able to do in bringing forward dollars from the private sector, hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been brought forward in just a very short time. There's great opportunities here for additional resourcing because this makes great human sense and it makes great economic sense for our community.
So what are we suggesting that we do immediately? We need to provide shelter and a day program in Daytona Beach. And at this point, I would congratulate and acknowledge the very significant work that the city has done in order to try to resolve this issue and look for other options. But those things are needed now, especially that day program. We need to reach agreement on a crisis response. This is fundamental to every government entity around this table. We need to be able to come to agreement on what that crisis response looks like, including size, location, services, and cost. And at some point, somebody says, well, does that mean 250 beds? We don't know. We don't know. But I think we have enough evidence and we have a model that is starting to evolve in Daytona Beach that will give us a lot more data that we didn't have before about how we can coordinate and bring these services to bear. I would point also at the collaborative that's already been looked at in Hearst Elementary, the conversion of Hearst Elementary in Holly Hill into a residential facility for homeless families and unaccompanied youth. That didn't happen by accident. The superintendent of the school board and the school board came together and with the county government and said, what's possible at this location? Well, it went beyond the possibility of just residential treatment in that one facility It actually was able to identify foreclosed properties in the near vicinity that could be converted to permanent housing once residents were successful in their treatment in Hearst Elementary. Those are the kinds of visions that we need going forward. Those are the opportunities that reside not only in Daytona Beach, but other locations around the county. We need to create this commission, and we're well on our way to be able to make that a reality. We want to improve the service coordination. This is again the model that's working right now in Daytona Beach. Shows you how you can connect the dots. You can bring these parties together and begin to solve real problems in the community. And lastly, we need to identify, track, and support every homeless person, but we need the data necessary to be able to help us make decisions going forward. We need effective data that tells us bed utilization rates. Where are they? When do they become vacant? Who's been using it? And when's the next availability so that we can get someone to be able to populate that bed? And it never lay empty in the community. We've got that data. It's something called the Homeless Management Information System. It needs to be converted to a community management information system and be made more readily available to be able to track and the resources that are available to be able to serve a lot of social services, but prevention services as well. Pantry services, rent utility assistance that is going on in every city and the county to be able to keep people from being that one last tragedy away from becoming our next homeless family. Those are the things that are high on our priority as well.
And perhaps one additional idea to consider is that local governments, and certainly the state government, gives providers a significant amount of funding. And having been a provider for a period of years, I realized that we didn't always target the toughest, most difficult clients with the greatest needs. And often that was due to the lack of motivation or the failure for someone to follow through. There's plenty of excuses not to work with difficult individuals. What we recommend is that we incentivize providers who target those highest risk people in your communities for service. And there's nothing like the dollar to drive decisions for providers. And we know that with the proper incentives and motivations, and in some cases sanctions, providers will target and deliver care to difficult individuals. And there's a partnership that funders can create with providers to make sure that they're meeting the needs that your communities have for services. And I think the three of us would volunteer to give you our insights as to how you can fashion contracts to ensure that those services are delivered, they're measurable, and there's outcomes associated with that are your outcomes and what you want to see happen. And that can be done quickly, if not immediately. So by year end, we believe there are a number of things that can be either in place or ready to be in place. We know that the timeline on Hope Place, our new family shelter, is going to be ready. When is it, Mark? It's sometime in 2016, right? It's in the
optimistically, probably spring of 17.
Okay, 16, 17. So yeah, probably not by year end, but we're working in that direction. And at the same time, when that happens, then there's the potential to retool the existing family shelter on North Street to serve medically needy and disabled individuals, to serve that chronic population. Again, as a crisis response, but only as an interim response, leading to ultimately to stable housing. Now, the third, site and ready and effective crisis response for homelessness. And you can say, okay, are you guys talking in code, or are you talking about safe harbor? What are you talking about? Well, yeah, we're talking about safe harbor. Safe harbor, understanding that it is the crisis response part of our system. And it clearly is an area in which we have not developed consensus across the community for a variety of reasons. Some of us aren't certain that our communities really need that aspect of crisis response. Others don't know what its purpose is, particularly if it's not clearly linked to making sure that people ultimately enter stable housing. Others have concerns about its location. There are a number of issues that have to be resolved, but the reality is we need crisis response that's available and accessible across literally our two-county area, both Volusia and Flagler County, so that people who are homeless have the opportunity to have a roof over their head and the opportunity to begin moving towards housing. So we have to get this figured out. Obviously, what's going on right now, the 80 beds that the Salvation Army is operating on an interim basis is going to, as Randy said, is going to give us a lot of guidance about, really what should our crisis response look like. Because the hard work that's going on right now is designed to see to it that every individual that goes into that shelter then is moving towards stable housing. And as we get data over the next 90 days, everybody in the government sector and as well as the private and nonprofit sector has to look very hard at how effective are we being in this. Do we perhaps have some of the resources that we need to address this issue already moving with the work that's been done over the last month or so? This Commission on Homelessness, it needs to be organized. It needs to establish its 501 nonprofit identity, and it needs to get staffed so that we can begin to have a centralized voice leading homeless issues in our community. We got to be pursuing every opportunity that's out there for resources to resource the system of care that we've been talking about here today. And we have to make sure that the private sector that has stepped up so dramatically over the last month remains engaged, and they bring those other intangibles to the table, their marketing knowledge, their ability to communicate broadly across the community what the issues are associated with homelessness and what the solutions are to homelessness. And so we've got to work today, tomorrow, the next day, and this community is demonstrating this is an issue that isn't going to go away, that we're going to continue working on. So ultimately, that brings us to a point where we're talking about changing the dialogue. We purposely put up, this is, Pinkman says, I remember that. That was one of the headlines from the news journal within the last month or so. But rapidly, we're moving towards, and I realize it's low on the slide, so you may not be able to see it. Let me read it to you. It says, community comes together to end homelessness in Volusia. Goal is achievable. That's the headline we want to see coming forward. And I'll just add one more thing to this. If we want to get down to a soundbite or a buzzword, it's one that's already well known in this community, one the United Way has used for a long time, and that is we got to bring together all sectors of our community for a collective impact, where all of us working together allow us to do things that none of us can do individually. And I'll let the rest of the group add any other final comments you want to make.
Okay. Thank you. I know we threw a lot of information at you. Do any of the roundtable members have questions right now of the group or anything that's in the report? Oh, Jason, I'm sorry.
You didn't have your card.
Yeah, sorry, don't have my card. And I apologize to the roundtable. I had some previous business I was finishing here in the airport, actually, so it's easy to get here. You talk about a commission that will require staff to implement its decisions. This brings to mind a couple of questions. I know we talked about a collaborator, consensus builder in this group from the private sector. But can you estimate, can they estimate how much this is going to cost staff-wise? How many staff members you're going to need? Because throughout this presentation, you're talking about grants, grant writers. I mean, we're talking a pretty big staff here. How much is all that going to cost?
Thank you, Chairman. We see this more as resources that are already available that need to be coordinated successfully around a single voice. A lot of the organizations that exist here are drawing grant money and know how to write grants. So it would be using their expertise in a collective way. So the individual that we see is somebody that can pivot and use this commission to be able to oversee community needs in the two-county area, and then identify the resources that are available in the city governments and the county that might be able to benefit. Randy spoke about some of the grant opportunities available. I think it's a crime to ever leave any money on the table and not get it brought down to do the work that needs to be done in the community.
And let me just expand a little bit further from that standpoint. When we talked about this and moving forward, the Commission on Homelessness is not going to be a direct provider of service, okay? They would be policy oversight. And then the agencies themselves, the nonprofits, would be the ones that would be actually implementing the programs from there. So that staff person that Ray was talking about, you need some administrative support, but you're not talking about a staff on the commission that's going to go write grants and bring it in and be direct service providers at all. Did that help a little bit?
Kind of. Still just looking for an overall cost of this commission.
Well, you had said, Andre, is like 100,000, I think.
Yeah, 100,000 there, okay.
So it would be, you're gonna need at least one administrative person. But again, what we're talking about is pooling existing resources that already are there. When you have over 5 million that come into the county already that they've identified, it's making sure everybody's coming together. And as they said earlier, that's clearly been evidenced on the three meetings we've had since we started dealing with what happened on Beach Street. It's everybody there saying, you've got a bed here, you've got funding here, and it's putting people in them. Yeah. So from that standpoint, the commission, though, you're not talking about hiring 10 people. You're probably talking about hiring 2 to
So
get
we're
it
probably
started.
looking at about $150,000 to $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
Does that help?
Sure.
Okay.
Just a brief comment. I think what you started out focusing on was the real key to this all working, and that was the leadership. The committee, the group can provide the expertise in bringing things together, but it seems like we have a lot of legs, a lot of eyes on the issue. We have a head, and the head is what's missing. And those of you on the roundtable have heard me say this for months, is that we need to have a head to bring it all together. And I've offered my thoughts on that, and I still feel that it should come from the county level, because this issue is not just an individual issue. It comes from the county. And if we could get the county to help with coordinating a person, maybe a commissioner on homelessness, or a commissioner on social services, or whatever you want to call that one person, to bring together and control and see that this group works together to bring everything that's available. And you saw how quickly people stepped up in 2 weeks, in 3 days, 2 days. 3 days. From our meeting that we had in January before the town hall meeting, what you were able to achieve by bringing together the faith-based groups, the social services, and the city. And your work, Pam, was very, very much needed to bring all that together. And that's all it's really going to take, is someone to make a difference. The people said after the town hall meeting, we saw it on the table, we have an issue of homelessness, we want to do something, we want to do something now, and that's where we are. The work that y'all can provide, the access, or the, I guess what you bring to the table as a group, as a committee, is invaluable. I mean, it's just, you couldn't put a price tag on what your experience of bringing everything together. The private sector, look how quickly Bob Davis stepped up when he saw a need. And we thought we had another need last week. He stepped up again. And so that's the private sector willing to step up along with the faith-based and social services and the local government. And that's what it takes. So thank you for your work. I'm sure there's probably other questions here.
Do y'all have any other questions now of the group or the report? Please think about it. I'm going to be reaching out to you in the next week to ask you to give us some feedback and your thoughts. If you have council meetings or we can email you the PowerPoint. I see Cindy is in the back of the room. She'll email it to all of you so that you can share with the other commissions and councils the information that's been presented today, if you'll do that. And then any questions or feedback that they may have, let us know. They're willing to continue to work and help. We're willing as a homeless subcommittee to keep working, and Mayor Penny has come to our working group because Holly Hill and Daytona Beach are right next to each other, and we're seeing firsthand how a coordinated system should function in the county, and we will continue to do that to all the individuals that we've been dealing with in this process are placed. We'll continue, and I see many of you in the room that we've been working with over the last 3 weeks, so thank you, all of you, for that.
Pam, thank you. Ray, thank you. Randy, thank you for your time. I've seen your work and the evidence of your work and the success of your work in the years past. And Chet, thank you so much for offering your services and your time on this issue, which affects all of us, every single one of us. So thank you for that. And with that, no other questions or comments on that. We'll move on.
You were asking for questions. I had some comments. One, it would be helpful if we could get the PowerPoint sent to all of us so we can share it with our colleagues. One, I just want to echo what Ed said a moment ago. We appreciate what all three of you have done. While the devil's still in the detail, I think you're largely spot on. As recently as last Friday, there was a meeting of the Central Florida Leadership Congress, and once again, they have extended a willingness and offer to, through Andre Bailey and the Central Florida Coalition, to work with Volusia County. They're probably going to start doing the same thing to help Polk County identify and work on its problems. As to Chet's comments about the Sadowski Fund, one, having been in Tallahassee recently and knowing a little bit about the legislation, that legislation is being crafted by legislators from Central Florida. One of the Senate sponsors, Senator Simmons. And so it is being crafted as supportive of what the Central Florida Homeless Coalition is doing, which is the housing first model. There was an editorial in yesterday's Orlando Sentinel supportive of that, and there was an editorial in Florida Trend that's supportive of what's going on there. A couple things that we learned in the land recently is that one of our providers is going to add an additional 20 beds, emergency, first response kind of housing. The second thing that we learned, and to your point about gathering information, we were told that there are approximately 100 that this person knew of under the radar homeless permanent housing. I mean, that's one thing. And I confirmed that with the Orlando people, that there are a lot of providers out there that really don't make it known that they have housing in neighborhoods for a lot of reasons that you can imagine. And the one thing I would submit that in your evidence-based homeless care, I think one thing that's critical in that whole piece, and maybe it's subsumed somewhere else, is the notion of transportation. Because to get to all those services, the homeless have to have a way to get there. Thank you.
Anything else, ma'am?
Not from that. If anybody else wants to comment, I did say questions, I apologize.
Or comment?
Let me give you my vote.
Alan?
I understand, I take all the money. I provide housing, you can house everything. Can't hear you. There must be, you have enough money, you accumulate, to house everyone. That's not an end result. You've got to get them to be productive citizens. Somehow, there has to be a methodology that's incorporated into this gathering. It has an end result that puts them back at us. But if you give them a house, they can't take care of it, it doesn't matter. So I would like to see an element where you make them productive citizens. That's what I want to see. That's what my community wants to see. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment, sorry, on that part. That's why that case management piece that they mentioned is critical. That's what we're doing with Salvation Army with the outreach. Mike Cornell's in the back of the room, is that case management. And I guess I would cap it and underline it, an exclamation point after it, that to be successful and do the intent of Housing First is you have to have the case management to help them make that transition to self-sufficiency. It's a critical piece. I agree completely.
It requires training.
It's bringing all the other pieces together, but it's having case management that knows how to actually provide that to them.
Councilmember Cusack?
Thank you so much. I enjoyed so much of the report. And we have to be mindful of the fact that we will not be able to save every person that's homeless. Some people will be homeless by choice. But there are many people who are victims of circumstances, and they're in a position that they need our help. Now, case management is the key. And with case management, it's a wraparound services. So therefore, hopefully with good, productive case management, when someone begins to slip off the slope, if you will, there's someone there that will help them back on track. Case management can also include neighbor to neighbor. And you're familiar with this when it comes to substance abuse, that you have a partner or a mentor. I think this is the same thing that we could incorporate in our case management piece. So it behooves us to look at this in the as a total package and understand if we say half, I'm pretty aggressive, I'll say even 3/4 of those folks. We are doing our due diligence as elected officials and as good stewards of tax dollars to do that. But to think that we can save everyone and go in with the mentality that we're going to, then I think that we are on the wrong track. But if we go in with the understanding that we as individuals and as elected bodies will be part of this wraparound neighbor to neighbor and can look at and keep people, help people stay on track, then we will have profit. And every dime spent will be money well spent in that. Thank you so much.
If I could just add to that, there's 2 local studies, and there's more detail behind this, but I'll mention in Central Florida in 2014, the Commission on Homelessness did a study, and they found that it costs 3 times less to place someone in permanent housing as opposed to living on the street in public house. So if there's no other reason that you may want to consider doing something differently, there is a financial incentive. About 8 or 10 years ago, when I was with Serenity House, we did a study, and we took 35 of what we call frequent flyers, the people who used up the most of our publicly funded resources, law enforcement, criminal justice, publicly funded hospital care, etc. And we had a baseline of them, for them over the course of 2 years. And then we placed them in permanent housing with that wraparound case management. And then we tracked them for 2 years while they were in that permanent housing to determine how many of those same costs they were using. And across the board, the reduction in cost was 90%. So one more example of there's some economics to this that make real sense. And as Chief Chitwood reminded us, is if you take care of those people in need, we will take care of those people who are exploiting the individuals in need, and it'll make our job a lot easier. So we recognize that not everyone who's homeless is equally in need or of services, and we can help with the right strategy sort out the people who can benefit the greatest from the people who may not have the same motivation to help themselves.
No other comments on that? I think the case management is very essential because that's the only sure way you can track the measurable results of the program. That way you know how effective, just exactly how effective it is. And it goes without saying, you have to have the case management. And if you do put in what Alan has said, it puts you in a situation of putting people back to be contributing members of the society. And wow, it's such a big undertaking, but we can do it. I'm looking forward to seeing that bottom on the headlines, maybe if our good friend Mr. Patrick Rice is here, maybe he can see that and maybe copy it. I'm not sure he is here, but
No, Eileen's right here.
I'm just kidding. I knew someone was writing, but hopefully she can see that that is the end goal of what we're trying to focus on. I think what you've done, Pam, again, this last year of your work on this is, it deserves an applause. And when we started this a little over a year ago, if this is something that comes out of it, it's been very worthwhile of having us all working together for the common good of all of us. With that, we'll move to the issue of Transportation Committee. You have a report on that, John?
No, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to ask one question.
Sure.
We needed some direction prior to calling the meeting, because, you know, we had worked on a half-cent sales tax. I got the current figures on what that would produce, around $39 million for our county this fiscal year. And I didn't know whether you wanted us to go back over the old habits, or do you want us to look at a new alternative? The funding still seems to be the need in every city. County funding, we've got the Sunrail issue, the additional funding for our extension to DeLand, and also the 5 years from now, the funding that is going to be mandated for the county. So if you want us to pursue that as additional revenue, or do you want us to get into the area of the needs of transportation needs in our county, which every city's got their needs, plus the county overall.
Well, I think that was the focus of it, was to determine, A, the needs, then to determine
Needs, and then how to fund it.
how to fund it.
All right, I'll schedule a meeting prior to our next meeting then.
And then you can if you can schedule that, that would be great. And we'll have maybe have a report on the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll move on to water issues, and let's see, that was Alan Green.
Yeah, last Friday we had a meeting up in foreign country like they had in Florida about what the water board. So having gone through that, one of the things that St. John and each other were telling us, make sure you've got something in planning board, make sure you're ready, get your documents, whether there is funding out there to assist. Also, there's a meeting later in this room that has to do with water. I also met with an individual civil engineer about a methodology for alternative sewer septic tanks that we could institute and put close to water that meets the requirements. We'll be bringing that data. I asked him if he could speak to us, but there are other methodologies than the standard septic tank. Not exactly what Oakville is using. They put him in debt and almost made him homeless. So there are other ways to do it, so I'll be bringing that forward. But that's where I stand.
Okay. And Mayor Jennings, I think you're...
No reports are on Beach Drive. I'm anticipating your question.
I figured you probably knew it was coming to you.
Thank you, sir.
Since we do have another meeting scheduled at 2:30, let's take about 10 minutes. If anyone has any comments from the public, if you'd like to come, we'll give you 3 minutes to provide some input. Big? We have been asked to clear so they can reset the room.
Big John on the Hill, to the wise men. Is this a public or a private corporation?
Private, not for profit.
Will it be open to the sunshine?
My recommendation would be yes, it should be.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Jim?
Jim Cameron, Senior Vice President, Government Relations, Daytona Regional Chamber. Wanted to say thank you to a number of y'all that went with us and saw us work together in Tallahassee last month for Volusia Days, and some of the items on your water issues list and stuff. We met with a number of legislators up there, and hopefully we get some movement on some of those water-related projects as it relates to flood control here in the Halifax area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
My name is Thomas Redmond, and I'm a homeless advocate. And, I have to say that I've never been more proud of Volusia County. I don't mean to exaggerate. I will say that 15 months ago, there was really a lack of services, a lack of attention, and regardless of how we got here today, we're here. And a lot of people are working really hard and they really care. And instead, I can't even tell you how taken back I am at the change we've made. And I have to say to you, I know that this is going to get national attention. I don't think you understand from a homeless service point of view the difference in your community today and what it was a year ago. And I'd like to thank all the leadership that made this happen, and especially Ms. Woods, the 3 people that did the research. I can't tell you how proud I am, and I look forward to taking your successes to other communities. I'm going to Sarasota next and showing them just what you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Anyone? Sure.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Denver, and I want to ask you guys to consider House Bill 191, which recently passed with votes from our local legislative delegation, and ask you to consider reaching out to Senator Huckel to have her make some needed corrections on the Senate companion bill. If you go back and look at Sunday's newspaper, you'll see Fred Costello did a masterful job writing a letter about House Bill 191, talking about how it preempts the federal government from controlling when and where fracking goes on in the state of Florida. He painted it as our shield against federal interference. What was left out of the letter was that it's also a sword against local government determination. It prohibits any of you cities, or us as a county, from stopping fracking wholesale in Volusia County should we choose. It also prevents any of our cities or our county to set higher water quality levels in conjunction with fracking than what the state chooses. Now, I know many of you guys are used to me coming up going, we should get a vote, we should get a vote, we should get a vote. Good Lord, this is our water supply in a limestone aquifer environment. And they want to not only frack here, but prevent each of you cities and all of us as a county from setting our own standards of which they have to adhere to even be considered to frack, or whether we should do it at all. Please go back and read that Sunday letter to the editor from Fred Costello, and then go back and read House Bill 191 for yourself. You'll see that letter was by no means full disclosure, and it is taking away our local self-determination. Please reach out to Senator Huckel, ask her to strike the preemption aspect and make sure that whatever standards the feds and the state come up with pertaining to fracking, that we maintain our local right and privilege to set our own standards or even prohibit it wholesale. Thank you for your
Thank you, Ray.
consideration.
We have time for about one more question, speaker.
How you doing?
Thank you.
My name is Robert Levay. I've lived in New York all my life. I came down here 2 years ago. I'm homeless. I lost my house. I lost my job because went out of business. I lost my house because I couldn't pay the mortgage. I'm down here for 2 years. There's a couple of things I'd like to ask. There's a bunch of homeless people over here are hungry, and you guys are eating right in front of them. I'd like to know why. How do you think these people eat? You know, they're hungry, and you're sitting there eating sandwiches. He's got a sandwich right over there. You ain't touched it. I'd like to know why. Why haven't you touched the sandwich? There's people over here hungry. Did you get a check? Did any of you guys get a check for the meal you're eating now?
I appreciate your comments. If you need food, I'm sure there's
it's not that I need food. I just want to know why you would do that in front of people that need food. You're sitting there and you're saying, where's all the money that's going into the $110,000 I seen on TV? And you're talking, we're talking about it. You're not talking about it. The money's on your meals over there. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you.
Can I be recognized?
She had waited.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Alvarez. I'm a Daytona Beach resident, and I've been a volunteer with Faith for the last 5 years working on the homelessness issues. And in listening to this presentation, there's so much good in it. Strategies to prevent homelessness, immediate housing when possible, service coordination, all of these things will go a long way towards dealing with the issue of homelessness in Volusia County. We will still, however, need the shelter piece. And the people at Faith have never said that Volusia Safe Harbor was the whole solution or the only solution, but it is a vital part of the mix. When we first started looking at the issue of homelessness in Volusia County, we found that certain segments of the homeless population were very well served by existing agencies. Families, veterans, people with diagnosis of mental illness, all had a way to get services. There weren't always enough, there was never enough money, but there were paths to services. The basic whole was shelter for single individuals. And that was the issue we started looking at. When we started looking at it, we found that one of the major reasons is that there's no funding stream for this group. And agencies, no matter how well-intentioned they are, cannot provide services without funds. The other issue that really drives it is siting issues for any kind of shelter. And the last one is that without a coordinated intake and assessment, like was spoken about, there's often no efficient way to get these folks hooked up with the services they need. And that once people have shelter, it is much easier for them to find their way back to being productive members of society. It's clear to us that basic shelter for single individuals was something that was needed then, and that it's unlikely that any community agency would have the resources to do this on their own, and therefore it would have to have a commitment from local governments. It's still clear that that's what's needed. Volusia Safe Harbor has never been portrayed as the solution to homelessness or as a permanent residence, but a way to funnel people into services through case management, healthcare services, and all of the other services that are needed. We remain committed to a 250-bed homeless assistance center. We think the center of the county is the best place for this because it avoids the siting issues, which would be very difficult anywhere else, and we would like to see an independent agency running it for all the reasons that were outlined before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But one more comment, one more speaker.
Save the best for last. Mayor Kelly, I commend you for your comments in the News Journal saying that Volusia Safe Harbor is a pipe dream and the surrounding cities need to man up. You know, before I retired after a heart attack and a 6-way bypass, I was a director of marketing for a manufacturing company here in Volusia County, member of the VMA. And what we did when we were going to roll out a new product is we did research, market research. And that involves surveys and focus groups, okay? Show of hands, anybody here been homeless? I didn't think so. Oh, thank you, Jason Davis, who has experienced homelessness. And we've had a conversation about that. But, you know, here's the deal, guys, okay? You don't know what you're talking about until you've actually lived it. So where is the representative from the homeless community on these panels? Why don't you actually talk to the homeless? Mayor Bob Apgar was the only one that came up at the Orange City meeting and said, has anybody asked the homeless what they think? Commissioner Woods, you're busy demonizing the homeless, calling them drug addicts and prostitutes and everything else, and then on the other hand, you want to help them. So which is it? I don't think you can have a foot in both pastures. I really don't. You either have empathy or you don't. You just can't demonize the population. You got to end the criminalization of the homeless in Daytona Beach, and then you need to start making change. And the start is to fire the city manager, because a fish rots from the head down. These practices have got to stop, and that's what I'm calling for. He can graciously retire. We'll buy him a new set of luggage, but his time is done. God bless.
That'll end our public comments. I think what you have seen today and what everyone in the audience is seeing, and those of you that are here, you've seen people volunteering to make a difference in our community, to address the issue, to address it head on, to find a way and a means to fund it and to make it work, to put people back into being productive citizens. And we're going to bring that together. The headlines are going to be there. And we'll go with member comments. Jim, if you have any comments, we'll go around.
No comment?
No comment.
I'd just like to say, as being a member of the homeless subcommittee for well over a year now, that it was Pam Woods, Doug Daniels, Thomas Booker, and myself. And I'm a layperson. I have to admit, I didn't know anything about homelessness until I joined the subcommittee. And the best thing that we did was bring on these 3 retired gentlemen here. And they volunteered graciously to educate myself and other members of the commission. And it's just, if we all come together and do a little bit of lifting, we can solve this problem. Because in the beginning of our subcommittee, I would go away thinking, Safe Harbor is dead. There's no way this will come together. The community, the county is too fractured. It's an east against the west, yet again. How do we overcome this? And brought these 3 experts in, and they may never have been homeless, but I know they've all provided social services to some people that were in dire straits. And they were able to save people's lives. And I think by listening to these 3 experts here, if we come together as Volusia County, the headline on the bottom will be true. So I just want to thank you 3 for all your hard work, and thank Daytona Beach for taking the leadership in this. Alex?
I take exception to comments about the city manager. I think you followed the law. You did what's best for the community. You did what's best for the people he represents. And I take exception to that. Thank you.
I've also served on the subcommittee for the last year, and we really took off, I think, with a lot of the rhetoric that we talked about. We seemed to go around and around for a while until some people showed up that had background in this area. But, you know, Pastor Mike, when it's cold, it's cold. Cold is cold, hunger is hunger. And it touches your heart. And the question that you originally asked, Chet, was that why do we do this? We do it because it's the right thing. That's the answer. And we have to adopt that countywide because it is the right thing. Whatever we have to do, we can sit at the table and argue for a while, but we'll eventually get to the point. We have to do that. So thank you very much, and especially you, good lady down there, Pam. You've done a wonderful job, and I hope you're still going to do so much. Because we're not there yet. Thank you.
I just want to, we're going to keep working it, and we're going to keep moving forward. And like I said, I do want to hear back from y'all in the next week or so, and we'll get that information to you. So thank you to committee members and these three. It actually, you know, getting to serve on the work group with them, it's been great, and they have challenged me in terms of, you know, us moving forward when we had the crisis, you know, facing the city. So it's been really, really good. Thank you.
Some of the work product from the Central Florida Leadership Congress, I forwarded to Senator Finney, and she will send it to all of the members of the round table. And I will also give her the 2 editorials that I referred to, so everyone can take a look at those if they haven't seen them. Thank you.
And you're an honorary member. Okay, she passed.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Joy. This Kuzma, I appreciate it. And once again,
Doug Daniels.
yeah, I was just going there, Doug, and there's that. Mr. Daniels had to leave early. Thank you for joining us today. The county manager's here and all this. From the county level, we've heard loud and clear. We are continuing to work with it. We look forward to working with you guys, and we will take this, all the council members who are here, I'm sure we will take this under advisement. We will probably discuss it in a couple of weeks when we have our own council meeting. I will talk with the manager and to see if there was somebody missing here, because I can't do your presentation for you, but you could. So if we need to redo that presentation in the chambers, maybe we'll see what we can do about getting that done up there. So good work, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And other than that, once again, sorry for being late.
But, Mayor Jim.
10 years ago, the mayors of Volusia County got together just like we're doing today. We went over the same identical thing, homeless. First of all, people's got to want to help themselves. One of you mentioned a while ago, identify. You've got to pick out the people that want to be helped. This man, the first one walked up here, has got 2 good legs, 2 good arms, and a good mouth. He ought to be working somewhere.
Give him a job.
So, I mean, how are you going to help them kind of people if they don't want help? So we're all doing a good job. We're doing the best we can, and it's getting better all the time. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, I guess this question is to Pam. Pam, the only thing that I'm still a little bit unclear of, I love the presentation. I think it's a possibility it could work. But how is that new nonprofit agency with the, as Chairman Davis pointed out, $200,000 to set up a new nonprofit? Where are they going to get the authority or the ability to move this program forward? We don't have to explain today, but that's a question I think I need more clarification of how that person's going to tie in, because it's got to have some sort of county support in that, because to pull the existing grant writers and all the other things that was brought up together, you're talking about a nonprofit agency that's going to be working with the county. It's going to be kind of, there's a rub there, I can see. I want to see if you've thought before, but that's why my question. And thanks for all the presentation, it was great.
No comment. Good presentation, fresh approach. Thank you.
And with that, we adjourn the meeting.
Whatever you wish to say. Okay. Well, we presented the global plan to the Roundtable of Cities today. We hope they'll take it back, read it over, think about it, and let us move forward on serving the homeless in Volusia County. So that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.